You're going to see a big change in Washington crime stats very soon. Or not the stats that they gave, because they turned out to be a total fraud. The real stats, the stats went through the roof. You know, they had a man that was forced to put up stats like they were doing better. They're not doing better. Crime is the worst it's ever been.
Yes, I've heard stories that the chief puts tremendous pressure on her commanders on crime and on, not necessarily on crime stats, okay, but on crime. She wants the crime to go down.
DC's Police Chief Pamela Smith said she expects a subpoena from the Department of Justice as it continues to look at whether DC crime stats can be trusted. This is an escalation in the federal government's takeover of the DC Police Department, but not entirely unexpected. Remember, from the first minute he announced this thing, President Trump called into question DC's crime drop, suggested DC's crime is as bad as it's ever been. Well, that's not true. But the White House also issued a press release accusing DC police of cooking the books, in the White House's words, when it comes to crime stats. Our Paul Wagner knows all about this issue since he broke a story about DC's crime statistics weeks before the White House ever got involved. So we asked him to bring us up to speed. This is for more context.
A D.C. police commander is under investigation for allegedly making changes to crime statistics in the district. News 4's Paul Wagner is here now with the story you'll only see on News 4. Paul?
Paul Wagner, you broke this story about a month ago, and I'm curious, what do you know now about how it's evolved and what the Department of Justice is doing?
Well, interestingly enough, our story didn't seem to have any impact outside of our own report. But internally, I heard that it was the talk of the police department and that their officers were making notes of what they were being told to do by supervisors. They were calling the head of the union, Greg Pemberton. They were asking him for advice on what to do if they were asked to do something that they didn't necessarily think they should do. And that went on for quite some time, is my understanding. For several weeks, it was the talk of the police department. And these officers were very concerned about being able to classify the reports the way they thought they should, and didn't want to be pressured and wanted to know what the union had to say about it. As far as what the Department of Justice is doing, what we do know from our sources is that this is being conducted by the U.S. Attorney's Office right here in the District of Columbia.
Paul, a federal investigation like this could be incredibly serious. Do you have any idea why they're investigating? I mean, are they looking to charge someone? Are they looking to, remove the chief or senior leadership? I mean, what's the goal here?
I can't answer that question right now. I don't know what the goal is. The fact of the matter is this. Gregory Pemberton, the chairman of the union, has been pushing this for quite some time now. He's been on our air a couple of times, and he believes that this is widespread through the police department. And when I did interview him, I asked him what the consequences to this could be. And he said that there could be criminal charges for doing things like this. And so if the U.S. Attorney's Office puts the resources in place to really dig into this, I mean, this could be an extensive investigation, questioning numerous officials and people within the police department. One of the note on that, Ted, we do know that the D.C. Police Union has done its own investigation. They have taken these reports and then they have compared the classification against what's called the narrative. So in these reports, and we use them all the time, every single day, you have the listing of the classification of the crime, then you have certain information that's included, and then you have the narrative. And the narrative is what basically happened here. And we know that the police union has collected, at one time I was told at least 100 reports that they believed showed that these were reclassified.
And if they've gathered 100 or maybe more than 100 of these reports that suggest this reclassification, just for the sake of conversation, let's say that's happened 100 plus times. That's slightly more than anecdotal, one-offs. Why would someone do that? Or why would a police commander want that done?
Let me give you another example. in my reporting back in early July, I spoke with an official who shared with me a email. It was a photocopy, or a photograph, I should say. It was a photograph of an email. And it was between two officials. And one official was saying to the other official, the only ADWs that I do are ADW gun, ADW knife. Anything else is reclassified as something less that doesn't fall into the violent crime statistics. Right this second, I'm drawing a blank on what that is. But in any event, when I saw that, I realized that if the allegation is true and if that email is legitimate, which I believe it to be, it would indicate that one official was telling another official that this is one way you can change the numbers. This is one way you can reclassify the numbers. And if you're a white shirt, that is, a supervisor on the police department, you are viewed at how you're able to drive down crime. And so if in fact one supervisor is saying, if you come to me with an ADW bat, ADW egg to the face, ADW pipe, I'm not going to call it an ADW, but I'm only going to call it an ADW, and that is assault with a dangerous weapon, if it's a gun or a knife. Now, that's a pretty serious allegation.
And I guess none of this happens, Paul, in a vacuum, right? These white shirts, DC police leadership, I would imagine are under pretty serious pressure to continue dropping violent crime in the district. Coming after 2023, we saw tremendous drops in violent crime. And then now this year, even more. Have you been able to report out how much pressure they're feeling from either the mayor or the police chief or even themselves to make sure that violent crime continues to go down in the district?
Yes, I've heard stories that the chief puts tremendous pressure on her commanders on crime and on not necessarily on crime stats, okay, but on crime. She wants the crime to go down. I've heard stories that she can be pretty clear with these officials and that she wants them to do whatever they can to drive down the crime. But Ted, for as long as I've been in the city, these officials, that's what they're told to do. This is their job, to drive down crime. What the union claims is going on is that there's this, I don't know how to describe it, because no one can prove that it was a directive from anyone, right? So there's no paperwork, smoking gun that we know of that says you need to do it this way and get it done, and we need to see the crime rate drop. And it's basically sort of a wink, wink, nod, nod kind of a thing, according to what the union has told us. Yeah.
It's not necessarily that a crime wouldn't be reported. Someone may be arrested. There may be a court case that results from these shootings. It just wouldn't be counted in the stack of crimes that people look at when they want to know how bad is violent crime in DC. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, that's exactly right. So, and the key to all of this is trying to get to these crime victims to determine and say, hey, look, here's the police report that says this happened. And if you read the narrative and it says that this happened to you, and I'm reading the narrative and I'm saying, wait a minute, this should be ADW gun, or, you got shot in the leg. How come it says felony assault? Do you agree with that? It's just a tremendous amount of work that we would have to do on our part, or someone else would have to do, to go back to these crime victims, look at the narratives in the reports and say, does this match what happened to you? Does this crime classification match what happened to you that perhaps the victim believes was classified improperly? But do they have a voice? That's another question, right? Can they go to somebody and go, wait a minute, you were prosecuting this as a felony assault when it should be armed with a dangerous weapon.
And ultimately, isn't that, Paul, where the possible tragedy is here? That victims will have their voice diminished and the possible punishments for people who hurt them lessened because of this possible recalculation or reclassification.
That's exactly right. And when you look at it that way, as I just said, if you're a victim and you've never been involved in a crime before, you've never been a victim of a crime, I should say, and you're being told that the person that they caught, we're going to prosecute it as a felony assault. However, you've been shot in the leg. And do you really know, though, do you as a crime victim really know that perhaps it should be armed with a dangerous weapon gun, which is a far more serious offense than a felony assault? You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah. My hope is we'll start to hear some of those stories. I know you're going to work on them, and certainly Department of Justice investigators will as well. But I want to take viewers back to mid-July, when you're reporting the story out originally, and you're talking with Chief Smith. Tell me about first the negotiation to even talk to her about that, and then what you agreed on. And I don't want you to tell me anything off the record, but tell me what you can about how that went down.
Well, everything was on the record. The way it happened was I interviewed Greg Pemberton. I had the interview in the can, as we call it, for a few days, and I wanted to get the chief's reaction to it. I knew that the commander had been placed on leave. I'd done all of this reporting. I was ready to go. Now I needed the chief's reaction. Well, I was told that the chief wouldn't comment. And then my phone rang. But then I saw that it was the chief, and I called her right back. And she told me that she did want to talk to me. And I said, well, okay, great. I'll come down to police headquarters, and we'll come down with a camera, and we'll do an interview. And then she said, no, I don't want you to come in through the front door. I don't want to be seen with you. Why don't we meet out on the street? And the chief said, no, I don't want to do that either. She said, can I come to your office? I said, well, sure. So she agreed to come up to the station. And so we planned it out, and she came up. Everything was on the record. We met in a small conference room at the station, and at the time, she wanted her general counsel to listen in on our conversation. And initially it was me, the chief, her spokesperson, Tom Lynch, and then her general counsel listening in. And the chief was very forthright with me. She came out and told her side of it, that she didn't condone anything like this, that she had a long career in law enforcement, that she would never order anybody to do anything like this. She was very clear to me that she thought that if this was really going on in the department, that she would get to the bottom of it, she wouldn't condone it, and she would make sure that people were punished if they were caught doing it. And then she did confirm to me that she had personally placed under investigation Commander Podium, and that she had seen, as she told me, some numbers that didn't look right to her, and so she personally placed him on leave. And then I said, well, okay, now you're telling me all this, Chief, let's bring a camera in, let's talk. And at that point she said, Mark, meaning she wanted a comment from her general counsel. And the general counsel advised her not to do it. Said, Chief, I know this is a public relations situation here, but I wouldn't do it. And so she didn't do it. And instead, she then came out into the newsroom, she met everybody in the newsroom, and then she left. And then we got a statement from her later in the day.
I sense it's not the last we've heard from her. The mayor also backed her statement that Chief Smith had checked all 7 district commanders, and Podium was the only one involved, and of course he denies it all. What do you believe? What's the question you really want to know? Do you really believe this is one person and that's the end of this?
I can only go on what we're reporting at this point and what Greg Pemberton has told us. I have done some other reporting that I'm not at liberty to disclose at the moment because some of it was told to me on deep background or off the record. And so I can't really go there. But I don't know what this federal investigation may turn up. Let me put it to you this way, Ted. For years and years, police officials and police officers and people that I know in this department have told me that this goes on. And I've always said to them, prove it, prove it. I mean, you guys say it happens. lay the cards on the table, and so when Pemberton put out that press release on May 22nd saying emphatically that this is going on, I said, we need to look into this. And we finally did.
Well, so let me switch gears slightly, Paul. What's it like when the president from the podium at the White House and then on his Truth Social starts talking about a story you broke?
I didn't see the whole news conference, but then I heard about it later. But I got to be honest with you. When this story first broke, when News4 first put the story out on July 18th, I thought it would get attention. In fact, other reporters and anchors were coming up to me in the newsroom saying, wow, you got a heck of a story here. And, it's going to be on the Washington Post tomorrow. Well, that didn't happen. Nobody paid any attention to it. WTOP was the only news outlet that paid any attention to it. But then, of course, I think things changed a lot when that Doge employee or the former Doge employee was assaulted, and that got the ire of the president, and things started to bubble up from there.
Yeah, well, look, just because people aren't as well sourced as you and aren't as good as a reporter as you are doesn't mean it wasn't a great story on the first day. So it was tremendous reporting then, and it's standing the test of time now. I'm curious, help viewers understand, neither the president nor any of his staff members have called you, have they, to ask what you know?
Oh, no one has. No, I haven't gotten any calls from DOJ or the White House or anything, no.
Nor are they giving you anything for the sake of, because you broke the story. How hard has it been since this DOJ investigation started to get anything from them?
Nothing. It's funny you ask that. I mean, no one's stroking your back saying, hey man, good job, here's a reward. No, that doesn't happen. No, man, you gotta keep digging. You gotta keep calling people, and hopefully you get the right person on the phone. I mean, so many times I tell you, I've picked up a story just from wandering into Superior Court, and somebody will grab me and pull me aside and tell me, something I needed to know. Yeah.
Yeah, but Paul, this is an example of incredible sort of staying on the story, getting it and testing your theory and pushing your sources, and you did it. And let's see what the DOJ comes up with.
Let's see what the DOJ comes up with. That's and my experience with that, Ted, is it could take a year or more, because that's the way they work. They are very, very slow in their investigations. I'm sure we're going to hear about it if they really put the resources into it. Let me put it to you this way. So if the U.S. Attorney's Office puts a team, and these would be prosecutors, on the case, and they begin sending subpoenas to certain police officials here in the city, I think we're going to hear about it. And then we'll be able to expand on our reporting.
Can't wait to find out what you find out, man. Thanks, Paul.
All right, Ted. Thank you.
Much like the takeover itself, there's no timeline for this investigation into the crime statistics to be finished. You heard Paul say, and I think he's probably right, that federal investigations like this take a long time. But the longer a cloud remains over MPD, the longer it could take to repair any damage between the DC Police Department and the people here they police. If you like this kind of context, there is a ton more right here on this page. Like it, subscribe to it, tell a friend about it. You can find me anywhere on social at TedNBC4. I'm Ted Oberg from the News4 I-Team. I'll be here working for you.